another thread of time, far from the flow of history we know, the winds of fate carried a different story. It was a night when the village of Konoha stood beneath a dark sky, the air heavy with tension, and the cries of newborns echoing faintly from within hidden chambers. The night that would become one of the most infamous in the Leaf's history. The night the nine-tailed fox was unleashed upon the village, was destined to unfold in tragedy. Yet in this telling, the hand of destiny shifted slightly, and what emerged was a clash of legends. For on this night, Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, would come face to face with the true mastermind who had lurked in the shadows, the man who called himself Madara Uchiha. And instead of fleeting glimpses, instead of hurried strikes, the two would engage in a battle that would shake the foundations of the shinobi world. The story begins, as it always does, with the birth of Naruto Uzumaki, his cries filling the room as Kushina Uzumaki endured the pain of childbirth, while also bearing the burden of being the nine tails Jinchuriki. The seals that held the beast within her weakened in that vulnerable moment, and from the darkness stepped the masked man, his Sharingan gleaming behind the spiral-patterned mask. He was calm, deliberate, and utterly confident as he tore through the protective measures placed around Kushina. In the original history, Minato's speed and instinct allowed him to rescue his son and momentarily force this man back. But in this woven strand of possibility, Minato did not just force him back. He stayed. He lingered. He recognized something in the aura of this intruder that demanded he could not simply push him aside. He had to confront him fully, to understand who he truly was. The night spiraled into chaos as Kushina was torn from her bindings and the nine tails was ripped from her body in a storm of hatred and chakra. Its roar thundered across the sky, shaking the foundations of the village. But Minato, instead of immediately rushing to contain the beast, made a fateful choice. He turned his full attention to the masked man. In his eyes, this figure was not merely another rogue shinobi. His presence carried the weight of legend, of danger on a scale that threatened more than just this night. He was no ordinary enemy, and Minato's instincts as Hokage told him that the true battle lay not with the fox, but with the one who controlled it. The two clashed in an open field, away from the cries of the village, their forms blurring in the darkness. The masked man moved with precision, his chains of chakra reaching out like serpents to bind the Hokage. Yet Minato, the yellow flash, slipped through space itself, evading the binds with the swiftness of his flying thunder god technique. Kunai gleamed as he marked the battlefield with his seals, creating a network of possibilities, a web of movement that made him untouchable. The masked man countered with a technique Minato had never seen before, his body flickering into intangibility, attacks passing through him as though he were a ghost. It was a battle of speed and perception, of reflex and intellect. For every feint, there was a counter. For every strike, an answer. And as they moved, Minato's sharp mind began to piece together the truth. This was no ordinary shinobi. The intangibility, the mastery of space-time, the Sharingan, it pointed to someone beyond the realm of simple rogues. When Minato's kunai finally grazed the mask, chipping away at the spiraled surface, he caught a glimpse of the face beneath. Young, yet marked by tragedy. His mind flashed to whispers from long ago, of a boy who had once fought alongside Kakashi, a student of his own sensei who had died on the battlefield. But no, this could not be Obito. The presence was heavier, older, filled with malice that transcended the grief of a single boy. And when the man spoke, his words carried authority, claiming the mantle of Madara Uchiha, the ghost of the clan's darkest history. The weight of that name struck Minato like a thunderclap. Madara, the man who had once stood against Hashirama Senju and nearly destroyed the foundation of the shinobi world. Madara, the nightmare figure who had lived in the stories of every generation since the founding of the villages. Could it truly be him? The Sharingan glared through the broken mask, and in that instant, Minato understood the gravity of what he faced. This was no battle for survival. It was a battle for the fate of the shinobi world itself. Their fight tore across the night. Minato's golden flashes cut through the darkness, striking from angles that seemed impossible, while Madara's phasing technique rendered blow after blow meaningless. Explosions of chakra lit the field, and the air trembled with the force of their jutsu. Yet neither man relented. For Minato, the protection of his village, his family, and his newborn son was all that mattered. For Madara, or the shadow who bore his name, the battle was simply one step in a grand design, a test of the man who stood in his way. As the two warriors pressed on, the fox roared in the distance, its chakra spilling like a tide of hatred across Konoha. But in this version of history, the battle between Minato and Madara took center stage, an epic clash that would forever alter the story of the shinobi world. The battlefield stretched like an endless canvas beneath the stars. Every flicker of chakra and clash of kunai painting a picture of legend. Minato's golden aura burned like a beacon in the night, his movements too quick for ordinary eyes to follow. Madara's form shifted like a phantom, the Sharingan spinning, each tomoe catching the light, as if the stars themselves reflected in his gaze. Their dance was one of violence and thunder, each strike carrying the weight of destiny. And though the village roared in chaos behind them, with the Nine-Tails tearing through walls and streets, the true storm raged here, in this duel between two men whose wills refused to break. Minato's mind worked with calm precision even in the midst of battle. He understood that brute force would not win this fight. Madara's phasing ability was unlike anything he had encountered before. Each attack that should have landed simply passed through the man, leaving only empty air. Minato tested his timing, marking his opponent with flying thunder. God seals whenever possible, vanishing and reappearing in a shower of sparks. Yet Madara adapted swiftly, phasing just long enough to let Minato's attacks slip past him, then re-emerging to counter with devastating precision. It was a duel of calculations, of intellects locked in silent combat, each probing for weakness in the other's techniques. The air cracked as Madara summoned forth massive wooden spikes, remnants of the wood style once thought to belong only to Hashirama Senju. They burst from the ground, spiraling like claws to crush Minato where he stood. But the yellow flash was already gone, flickering across the field in a blur of gold. His kunai, scattered like constellations, gave him the freedom of the night sky itself. Every tree that rose, every root that threatened to bind him, was answered with a flash of light as Minato reappeared behind Madara, Rasengan spinning in his palm. Yet even when the sphere of chakra connected, it slipped harmlessly through the phantom body, dispersing into the night with a hollow echo. Madara's voice, low and calm, carried over the battlefield. "You are fast, Hokage, faster than any I have faced. But speed cannot touch that which does not exist." His words were not taunts, but pronouncements, delivered with the certainty of one who had seen centuries of conflict. Yet Minato did not falter. His breath was steady, his eyes focused, his kunai gleaming in his hands. He did not need to match Madara's confidence with words. He only needed to act. In that moment, Minato began to see the rhythm in Madara's technique. The phasing was not endless. It required timing, intervals, moments of solidity that could not be avoided. It was subtle, hidden within the flow of movement. But Minato's sharp eyes began to catch it. The hesitation, the instant when Madara had to exist in the world once more. It was there, fleeting but real. And it was the opening Minato needed. As he pieced this truth together, the weight of his responsibilities pressed heavily upon him. Behind them, Konoha was crumbling. The Nine Tails roared with hatred, its tails sweeping aside houses as if they were mere leaves in a storm. Shinobi rushed to protect the villagers, but against the raw power of the fox, their jutsu shattered like glass. Kushina, weakened from the extraction, fought desperately to contain what little of the beast's chakra she could. But her strength was waning. Minato could sense it all. The cries of his people, the fading pulse of his wife's chakra, the fragile heartbeat of his newborn son. Every moment he spent locked in battle with Madara was a moment the village suffered. Yet he knew with absolute clarity, if he could not end this fight, no one else could. Madara's presence overshadowed even the Nine Tails. If he remained unchecked, the village would not simply fall tonight. The entire shinobi world would fall in the years to come. With this conviction burning in his chest, Minato pressed forward. He vanished in a golden flare, reappearing behind Madara, with a kunai aimed directly for his back. Madara phased, letting the blade pass harmlessly through. But in that instant, Minato flicked another marked kunai into the air. He disappeared again, reappearing where the kunai spun, and launched himself downward with a spiraling Rasengan. For a heartbeat, Madara had to solidify. The jutsu connected, smashing into his body with explosive force. The ground cratered beneath them, and for the first time, Madara's composure wavered. Dust settled, and though Madara rose from the impact, a faint crack ran across his mask. His Sharingan gleamed brighter, his tone colder. "So, you see through it? Impressive. You may be the first to challenge me in centuries." His words were acknowledgement, but also warning. The battle was no longer a test. It was becoming a struggle for survival. Minato stood tall, kunai still in hand, his cloak fluttering in the wind. He knew the cost of every second, yet his resolve did not waver. He thought of Naruto's small hands, of Kushina's exhausted smile, of the villagers who looked to him not just as a leader, but as their shield. He could not allow fear to sway him. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would do so again. For that was the duty of Hokage, not to live for oneself, but to give everything so that others might see another dawn. The night pressed on, the air heavy with chakra, as the two legends prepared their next moves. Madara's aura darkened, his chakra swelling with an intensity that bent the grass and rattled the earth. Minato's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening around his kunai as his seals glowed faintly in the darkness. They stood, two titans separated by the space of a breath, each waiting for the other to make the next move. And as the nine tails roared in the distance, their battle entered its next stage, the fate of the shinobi world hanging by a thread spun in gold and crimson. The night deepened, and with it, the intensity of the clash between Minato Namikaze and Madara Uchiha. The moon hung above like a silent witness, its pale light tracing the movements of two shinobi, whose names alone carried the weight of legends. For the shinobi world, this was a battle that was never meant to be seen. It was a battle between eras, the new age represented by the fourth Hokage, and the lingering specter of the old, embodied by the ghost who claimed the name Madara. The air rippled with chakra, and the earth beneath their feet bore the scars of their unrelenting struggle. Madara was no longer toying with his opponent. His chakra spread out in waves, heavy and suffocating, pressing against Minato's lungs with each breath. With a single gesture, he raised barriers of wood and stone, remnants of his mastery over stolen powers. And from the ground surged colossal roots meant to skewer the Hokage where he stood. But Minato was light itself, vanishing in a shimmer of gold before the attacks could land, his form reappearing across the field where a marked kunai awaited. The kunai scattered through the battlefield were his anchors, his lifelines, and with every flicker of motion, he bent the fight into his rhythm. Yet even the yellow flash could feel the edge of strain. His chakra reserves burned faster than he liked, each teleportation exacting a price. And the longer this duel dragged on, the more he knew he was fighting not just Madara, but the weight of time itself. Madara's voice carried over the chaos, calm and almost sorrowful. "You are strong, Hokage. Perhaps stronger than I expected, but strength is wasted when bound to a crumbling system. Konoha, the villages, this entire shinobi world, they are illusions destined to rot. Only through pain, through my eye of the moon, can true peace be achieved." His Sharingan glowed crimson in the dark, its tomoe spinning as if to pierce Minato's very soul. Minato said little. Words, he knew, would not change this man's conviction. But in his heart, he rejected every syllable. The village was not perfect. It was flawed, fractured, and often unjust. Yet it was home. It was the laughter of children in the streets, the bonds forged between comrades, the hope carried by each new generation. Those things were not illusions. They were what made life worth protecting. And for them, Minato would fight until his last breath. The clash resumed with renewed ferocity. Minato closed the distance in a flash, his Rasengan forming in an instant, glowing like a star in his palm. Madara countered, his body phasing as the sphere tore through air, and in that split second of intangibility, chains of chakra lashed out, coiling around Minato like serpents. The Hokage reacted with speed born of instinct, vanishing to a marked kunai before the binds could tighten, and reappearing behind Madara with another strike. Their rhythm had become a deadly pattern, Madara phasing, Minato teleporting, neither able to land a decisive blow. But beneath that rhythm, Minato's sharp mind was unraveling the truth. He could see it more clearly now. The faint pause, the moment when Madara had to solidify before his next phase. It was an instant so brief it could be overlooked. But to Minato, it was enough. The key lay not in overwhelming his opponent, but in striking at that precise heartbeat when Madara returned to the world of flesh and stone. Timing would decide everything. Still, the battlefield reminded him of the stakes pressing on all sides. The Nine Tails rampaged closer to the village center, its tails flattening buildings, its roar shaking the heavens. Fires spread, casting the night in a hellish glow. Shinobi fought with all their might, but against the fox's overwhelming chakra, they could do little more than delay destruction. Minato's heart clenched as he felt Kushina's chakra weakening further, her life ebbing away even as she fought to hold the beast's power back. and somewhere, wrapped in blankets, Naruto's small body rested, utterly vulnerable. The weight of everything, his duty as Hokage, his love as a husband, his role as a father, pressed against him all at once. He had no choice but to end this battle quickly. Madara raised a single hand, and the ground beneath them cracked as a vortex of energy spiraled open. Space itself warped, a gateway of swirling darkness threatening to pull Minato in. Kamui. It was a power unlike any other, an ability to tear one from the world entirely. Minato's cloak snapped in the wind as he teetered on the edge of being consumed. His kunai glowed faintly as he clutched one tighter, focusing on its seal. In an instant, he vanished, reappearing a dozen yards away, his body whole, his breath sharp. The vortex closed with a low hum, and Madara's masked gaze turned toward him with something resembling amusement. "You see it," Madara murmured. "You understand. But understanding will not save you." Minato did not answer. Instead, he let his silence carry his resolve. He scattered 3 more kunai into the field, their arcs glowing briefly before embedding in the earth. He was laying the pieces, aligning the pattern, shaping the moment that would decide everything. The fight was no longer about survival. It was about precision, about finding that single heartbeat where his light could pierce the shadow. The tension stretched like a drawn bowstring, both shinobi measuring the other. Madara's Sharingan spun faster, the air around him crackling with anticipation. Minato's stance steadied, his cloak lifting with the breeze, his golden hair catching the moonlight. For the first time, both men stood still, waiting, preparing for the inevitable collision. And then, in the distance, a cry, faint but distinct, reached Minato's ears. It was Naruto, his newborn son, his voice fragile, yet filled with life. That sound cut through everything. The chaos of battle, the roar of the Nine Tails, the suffocating aura of Madara. It anchored Minato, sharpened his will into something unbreakable. He would not falter. Not tonight. Not while his son cried for the world he had yet to know. The 2 legends moved at once. Madara surged forward, chains Suristes lashing, Sharingan blazing. Minato flickered into golden light, kunai spinning in arcs that painted the field with fleeting stars. The stage was set, the opening prepared. And as they clashed once more, the battle reached its most dangerous rhythm. The moment when the fate of the shinobi world would be decided by a single breath, a single instant of timing. The battle between Minato Namikaze and Madara Uchiha stretched onward, the night sky now thick with drifting clouds, as if the heavens themselves watched in silence, uncertain of which legend would emerge. Victorious. Both men had begun to show the strain of their endless clash, though in very different ways. Minato, ever graceful, still moved with the fluid swiftness of the yellow flash, his chakra carefully rationed, his mind sharp, despite fatigue gnawing at him. Madara, however, radiated an unshakable presence, his chakra vast and unrelenting, his every strike carrying the weight of ancient ambition and the fury of a man who had fought against fate itself for far too long. And yet, Minato did not falter, nor did he allow doubt to creep into his heart, for though he knew he was standing before a titan, a man who embodied the very chaos of shinobi history, he was also aware of what he fought to protect: his village, his family, his future. That purpose gave him strength enough to stare directly into Madara's blazing Sharingan without flinching. Madara, amused and intrigued by this younger opponent, began to shift his tactics. He had tested Minato's teleportation, his speed, and even his cunning use of sealing techniques. Now, he raised his Susanoo once again, its massive form cloaked in eerie violet armor, glowing beneath the storm. The blade it held shimmered with unnatural sharpness, its swing carving through trees and earth alike. Yet Minato, marked kunai flashing in his grip, danced around the strikes with such precision that it almost seemed rehearsed. Each movement brought him a hair's breadth from destruction, but his composure remained absolute. It was then that Minato sought not simply to dodge, but to exploit every gap. With a flicker of light, he vanished, reappearing at the shoulder of the giant warrior. His Rasengan roared to life, crashing against the Susanoo with explosive force. The impact sent cracks through its armor, a shudder that even Madara did not expect. For the briefest of moments, Minato thought he had found his opening. Yet Madara's laughter rumbled across the battlefield, low and unbothered, as the cracks sealed themselves with another surge of chakra. "Impressive," Madara admitted, his voice echoing beneath the hum of power. "Few in history have forced me to take you this seriously. But speed alone cannot rewrite destiny." With a gesture, Madara wove hand seals, summoning a sea of flame that roared outward in all directions, consuming forest and earth alike in a fiery inferno. The heat swelled, suffocating, threatening to engulf everything. But Minato was no stranger to overwhelming odds. He scattered his marked kunai in all directions, teleporting from one to another in an intricate pattern that seemed almost impossible to follow. His afterimages blurred into golden arcs through the inferno, until the flames could not catch him, could not even touch the hem of his cloak. Minato's counterattack came swiftly, a sealing formula etched upon a kunai hurled with pinpoint precision. It landed against the armored chest of Susanoo, glowing faintly as the formula activated. For an instant, the towering avatar of chakra flickered, destabilized by Minato's sealing jutsu. He darted forward, Rasengan charged and ready, his eyes focused not on Madara's armor, but on the man within. Yet Madara, with Sharingan spinning, predicted his approach, his body blurring as he invoked his phasing ability, slipping between reality and intangibility. Minato's Rasengan tore through empty space, its energy dissipating with a haunting echo. "You cannot strike what does not exist," Madara murmured, his expression calm, but laced with cruel confidence. But Minato, ever the strategist, had not committed blindly. His kunai had not been aimed at Madara's body, but at the space where he would rematerialize. He understood, even with limited knowledge, that no ability was without limits. He pressed forward, creating layers of pressure that forced Madara to reveal the timing of his return to tangibility. Each near miss was not a failure, but a calculation. The battlefield became a chessboard, and Minato moved with careful precision, anticipating Madara's counters and baiting him into exposure. Still, the danger was immense. For every clever trick, Madara's power loomed larger. His reserves of chakra dwarfed Minato's own, and his experience stretched across wars and generations. Yet Minato did not falter, even as sweat trickled down his brow and his breath grew heavier with each passing clash. He knew this battle could not be won in endurance, only in decisive execution. The storm above deepened, thunder cracking like the drums of an unseen war, lightning illuminating the battlefield in stark flashes. Madara stood tall within the glow of his Susanoo, a figure that seemed more myth than man. Minato, crouched low, kunai at the ready, was but a single shinobi standing in the shadow of history. And yet, in that contrast lay the heart of the struggle, the reminder that destiny is not solely claimed by those with overwhelming might, but by those willing to bear the weight of hope. Minato thought of Kushina, of Naruto, of Konoha's countless faces who trusted him without ever fully knowing the sacrifices he carried. He thought of their laughter, their ordinary days, and the fragile peace that deserved to be protected. These thoughts steadied his hand, even against the terrifying presence of Madara Uchiha. Madara, noticing the fire in Minato's gaze, allowed himself a rare smirk. "You truly believe you can protect them all, don't you? Even against someone like me. That belief will be your undoing. Because belief is fragile. Power is eternal." His words lingered like shadows, meant to break resolve, to chip away at conviction. But Minato only stood straighter, his cloak fluttering in the storm's breath. "If power without heart is eternal," he replied softly, "then it is an eternity without meaning." The clash reignited with furious momentum. Minato moved faster than ever, warping between kunai, as golden streaks of light tore across the battlefield. Madara unleashed his full might, his Susanoo's strikes shaking the earth, his eyes burning with the endless flame of ambition. The two forces collided. A storm within a storm, each exchange threatening to reshape not just the outcome of the battle, but the very legacy of shinobi history. And though neither had yet yielded, both knew the decisive moment was drawing closer, a culmination where belief and power would finally collide, and only one would remain standing when the night gave way to dawn. The storm did not ease, and neither did the clash between Minato and Madara. Their battle had gone beyond simple technique or speed. It had become a contest of wills, each man forcing the other to reveal the depths of his spirit. The land around them bore the scars of their struggle. Trees had been reduced to splintered stumps, stone shattered into dust, and the once quiet night filled with the endless chorus of crashing force, of wind tearing through the battlefield, of earth groaning beneath the pressure of jutsu, more powerful than most shinobi could ever comprehend. Yet through all of this destruction, Minato still moved with grace. His steps were light, his cloak fluttering like the whisper of a flame that refused to be extinguished. Each time Madara swung with Susanu's colossal blade, Minato slipped past the edge, teleporting to a marked kunai, reappearing in golden flashes that lit the battlefield with brief but brilliant sparks. He seemed untouchable, though both men knew the truth, that this was not a fight he could draw out forever. His stamina was finite, his chakra carefully balanced against the endless well that Madara drew from. Madara, for his part, was relentless. His Susanoo loomed like a nightmare, towering and unyielding, violet light burning against the darkness. His eyes tracked every movement, Sharingan spinning with cruel precision, predicting, adjusting, adapting. And though he admired Minato's skill, he did not hesitate. He struck again and again, waves of chakra crashing outward, jutsu so large that they threatened to swallow the battlefield whole. But Minato remained unshaken. Even in the face of overwhelming power, his heart was steady, focused on what mattered most. A flicker of thought ran through Minato's mind as he narrowly avoided another crushing strike. He remembered the night of the Nine Tails attack, the way he had faced overwhelming odds before. He remembered Kushina's strength, Naruto's tiny face, and the weight of his decision to sacrifice himself so the future could endure. And though this battle was different, those memories gave him strength now. He understood that Madara was not merely a shinobi of great skill, but a man who carried his own vision, his own twisted dream of peace. To face such a dream required not only speed and strength, but unshakable conviction. Madara's voice carried through the storm as his Susanoo's sword cleaved a valley into the earth. You delay the inevitable. You move like lightning, but lightning always fades, and when it does, the darkness remains. His words were heavy, filled with the certainty of a man who believed himself to be destiny itself. But Minato's reply was calm, his voice steady, even amid the chaos. Lightning doesn't fade. It leaves behind the memory of its light. Even if I fall here, what I protect will endure. That's what you don't understand, Madara. The words hung between them for a moment, before Madara's smirk deepened, more intrigued than ever. He dismissed his Susanoo's blade for an instant, weaving hand signs so swiftly that even Minato's eyes could barely follow. A great dragon of fire erupted from his hands, its maw roaring with searing heat as it surged forward, swallowing the battlefield in flame. The inferno was so massive that it seemed nothing could survive it, a wall of heat that bent the trees into ash and split the air with suffocating weight. And yet, Minato was already moving. His kunai scattered across the burning field, their seals glowing faintly in the firelight. He vanished from one to another, teleporting in a rhythm so intricate that he seemed to glide above the flames, untouched by their hunger. With each flicker, he drew closer to Madara, Rasengan spinning in his hand, its energy pulsing with the force of determination itself. He reappeared directly at Madara's side, his strike aimed perfectly for the man behind the armor. But Madara had been waiting. His Sharingan spun, and in the instant Minato's Rasengan should have struck, Madara's body shimmered, slipping into intangibility once more. The jutsu tore through nothing, exploding into harmless air. Minato vanished again, avoiding the counterstrike, his mind racing. He had forced Madara to use his phasing ability again, narrowing down its rhythm, its timing. Every failed attempt was not wasted energy, but a piece of the puzzle falling into place. Still, the pressure grew. Madara's Susanoo reformed, armor thickening as if mocking Minato's efforts. Its hand gripped the air, drawing forth another weapon forged from chakra itself. The giant form swung down, shaking the ground so fiercely that craters spread outward like ripples in a pond. Minato barely escaped, golden light flickering to another kunai perched on the far ridge. He stood there, panting now, sweat sliding down his brow. He knew he could not keep this pace forever. But he also knew he could not relent. Madara, towering in the distance, watched him with quiet fascination. "You remind me of Hashirama?" he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the storm. "That same resolve, that same foolish hope. And yet, he fell, and so will you. There is no place for men like you in the world I will create." His words carried both admiration and scorn, a complicated mixture that revealed the layers of his history. Minato's eyes softened for a moment. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I will fall. But if I do, it won't be because I gave in to despair. It will be because I stood for something worth protecting." He tightened his grip on his kunai, his resolve as bright as the lightning that cracked above them. The two forces collided once more, each strike louder than thunder, each clash brighter than lightning. Minato vanished and reappeared in streaks of gold, forcing Madara to reveal more of his hand, more of the secret rhythm of his intangibility. Madara struck with Susanoo's crushing might, each blow echoing like the judgment of history itself. Neither yielded, neither flinched. And though the storm howled and the earth quaked, the quiet truth beneath it all was clear. The outcome of this battle would shape not only their fates, but the fate of the shinobi world itself. And as Minato's cloak flared in the rushing wind, as Madara's eyes burned with ancient fire, the night seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when one man's light or another's shadow would finally prevail. The clash of Minato and Madara carried into the heart of the storm, their battle now less a fight between shinobi and more a clash of ideals. Each strike a conversation, each counter a statement. The battlefield was unrecognizable. The earth was carved into deep scars where Susanu's blade had landed. Trees were reduced to ash by firestorms, and craters marked the places where Rasengan had detonated with thunderous force. Yet within this chaos, there was a strange stillness, as if the world paused to bear witness. Minato, standing at the far edge of one such crater, took a deep breath. His cloak fluttered in tatters, his body aching with strain. He was tired, that much was certain, but his eyes carried no sign of surrender. He studied Madara carefully, noticing the faintest details, the rhythm of his intangibility, the slight delays between Susanu's movements, the glimmer of calculation in those eternal Sharingan eyes. Every observation mattered. This was no ordinary opponent. This was Madara Uchiha, the ghost of an old era, and Minato knew that only perfect timing could bridge the gap between their power. Madara, high above in his armored avatar, looked down with an expression that was neither fully contempt nor admiration. It was something in between. "You've lasted longer than I expected," he admitted, his voice rumbling through the storm. "But you know as well as I do that this cannot continue. Your chakra is finite. Your body is failing. You stand against inevitability." Minato's reply came soft, steady. "If I fall, it won't be because of inevitability. It will be because I gave everything I had to protect what matters. That's something you'll never take from me." His words were not spoken to inspire fear or dominance. They were spoken simply, truthfully, like the whisper of a man whose heart was immovable. Madara narrowed his eyes, the Sharingan glowing like embers. "You sound like Hashirama," he said again, this time almost wistfully. "Belief, conviction, those things are nothing more than fragile illusions. I crushed his ideals once. I'll crush yours now." With that, his Susanoo drew its blade once more, and the ground quaked under its weight. But Minato was already moving. A golden flash streaked across the battlefield as he warped from one marked kunai to another, each movement bringing him closer. Madara's blade came down like a mountain falling from the sky, but Minato slipped past, reappearing at the edge of Susanu's chest. His palm pressed forward, Rasengan spinning with destructive force. The impact rang out like a drumbeat, cracking through the armor, splintering it across Madara's torso. The great avatar staggered, and Minato vanished again before the counter could land. He reappeared across the battlefield, crouched and ready, his breathing ragged. He had drawn blood, metaphorically, if not physically. He had shown that even Madara's overwhelming might had openings. But Madara's smirk remained, his aura unbroken. "You're learning," he said, his voice calm, his tone almost approving. But this is still not enough. He released another wave of chakra, so massive that the very air vibrated. His Susanoo expanded further, growing into a monstrous form that blotted out the stars themselves, its armor layered and glowing with terrifying power. It now held not one weapon, but two, each forged from pure chakra, each radiating a pressure that threatened to crush Minato where he stood. For the first time, Minato's eyes widened. This was no longer a battle against a man. This was a battle against the embodiment of destruction itself. And yet, he did not falter. His hand reached into his pouch, fingers brushing against the familiar weight of his kunai. He had always believed that no matter how large the threat, precision could overcome force. And so he held on to that belief now, even as the night seemed to collapse under the weight of Madara's power. The ground shattered as Susanoo's twin blades came down. Minato moved, vanishing just before the strikes landed, golden flashes scattering across the battlefield. He warped from one kunai to the next, weaving an intricate pattern that confused even the Sharingan for a heartbeat. Each flash of light was a heartbeat of defiance, a reminder that speed, when paired with intent, could rival even the power of gods. And yet, with every movement, Minato felt the weight of exhaustion pressing harder against him. His chest burned, his breath caught in his throat. His muscles trembled under the strain of maintaining his pace. Still, he pressed on, not because he thought victory was guaranteed, but because he knew he had no choice. For him, failure meant Konoha's destruction, the erasure of everything he had sworn to protect. Madara's laughter cut through the night, low and resonant. This is what you choose to fight for? A village that will only betray itself, that will crumble under its own weakness? You're a fool, Namikaze. A noble fool, but a fool nonetheless. His voice was not mocking, but certain, as if he spoke from experience, from wounds too deep to ever heal. Minato's response was quiet, almost a whisper, yet it carried clearly through the storm. Even if it crumbles, even if it falters, it's worth protecting. Because within that village are people who believe in one another, people who find strength not through fear, but through hope. That's why I'll never stop fighting for them. The words pierced through the storm, not as an attack, but as a declaration. Madara's smirk faltered, if only for an instant, the faintest flicker of something deeper passing through his gaze. But then it vanished, replaced once more by the hardened fire of ambition. Then you will die with that hope, he said coldly, his Susanoo raising its weapons once more. The battle reignited with even greater fury. Minato warped from point to point, his golden flashes raining across the battlefield like falling stars, while Madara's colossal avatar shook the very heavens with each strike. The clash of their ideals thundered louder than the storm itself, until it seemed the world could no longer bear their presence. And in the stillness between their strikes, as lightning arced across the sky, the unspoken truth settled over them both. The end was near. The final act of their struggle approached, where neither speed nor power alone would determine the victor, but the strength of conviction that each man carried in his heart. The storm above them reached its peak. Thunder rolling like drums of war, lightning splitting the sky into jagged rivers of white. The battlefield had been reduced to ruin. Valleys carved into the earth, flames smoldering where forests once stood, the scent of scorched stone and torn soil filling the air. At the center of this devastation stood two figures who had gone far beyond the limits of ordinary shinobi. Madara, with his colossal Susanoo, glowing like a nightmare-given form, and Minato, his cloak torn, his body trembling, yet still cloaked in the golden flicker of his teleportation. Every breath Minato drew was heavy now. His muscles screamed with exhaustion, his chakra reserves stretched thin. And yet his mind was still sharp, still locked onto the rhythm of Madara's movements, the flow of his intangibility, the timing of his overwhelming strikes. He had pieced together fragments of opportunity, but he knew he would only get one chance to end this battle. If he failed, there would be no second attempt. Madara gazed down from within Susanoo's armored chest, his eyes like burning coals. "You are at your limit, Namikaze. One more strike, and this ends. Your light will vanish, and with it, the fragile dream you cling to." His voice carried no malice now, only the certainty of a man who believed he had already won. But Minato's voice, though soft and ragged, carried its own conviction. "Even if I vanish, the light I carry won't die with me. That light belongs to everyone who comes after. And that's something you'll never erase." His hand tightened around his last marked kunai, its seal faintly glowing in the stormlight. Madara raised Susanoo's twin blades, the giant form casting its shadow over the broken battlefield. With a roar of chakra, he swung downward, each strike carrying enough force to crush mountains. The ground split and quaked, shockwaves tearing outward, scattering dust and stone. But in that instant, Minato vanished, his golden light streaking across the battlefield in a blur too fast for the eye to follow. He warped from one kunai to another, not in random patterns, but in a carefully orchestrated dance. Each flash of light drew him closer, each teleport carrying him through the rhythm of Madara's attacks. His Rasengan began to form in his palm, swirling violently, not just with chakra, but with the weight of his will. This was not merely a technique. It was the culmination of everything he fought for, everything he protected. Madara's Sharingan spun, tracking his movements, trying to predict the final step. He shifted into intangibility, expecting to phase through Minato's strike as he had before. But this time, Minato had timed it perfectly. In the instant, Madara flickered between solidity and ghostly untouchability. Minato's Rasengan collided with Suzanu's chest. The impact was like the cracking of the world itself. A blinding light exploded outward, golden chakra tearing into violet armor. The Susanoo shattered, fragments dissolving into the storm, its immense body collapsing like broken glass. The explosion rocked the earth, throwing dust and debris into the air. When the smoke cleared, Madara staggered back, his cloak torn, his body scarred from the blow. For the first time, the great Uchiha looked less like an immortal legend and more like a man brought to his knees. His Sharingan still burned, but there was a flicker of something else in his expression. Surprise, and perhaps a sliver of respect. Minato, standing across from him, swayed on his feet, the Rasengan fading from his palm. His body could barely hold itself upright. He had poured everything into that strike, every last drop of chakra, every last shred of strength. He knew he had no more to give. Madara's voice was low, almost a whisper. You remind me too much of him. Hashirama, always clinging to ideals, always standing in the path of the inevitable. But even so, you forced me to acknowledge you. His eyes narrowed, his chakra flaring again, though weaker now. But you haven't stopped me. Not yet. Minato closed his eyes briefly, drawing in what little breath remained. Maybe not. But as long as someone carries this will forward, you'll never win. His thoughts flickered to Kushina, to baby Naruto, to the village that lay beyond this battlefield. He saw their faces in his mind, and that vision gave him peace, even now. Madara straightened, his wounds evident, but his ambition unshaken. Then we are at an impasse, he said, his tone colder now, but tinged with the faintest edge of respect. You cannot strike again. And I, though injured, will continue my path. He turned slightly, his cloak dragging across the ruined ground. But remember this, Namikaze. You did not defeat me. You only delayed me. Minato's golden light flickered one final time, his body trembling as he collapsed to one knee. He could no longer rise, no longer fight, but he smiled faintly, even in defeat. Sometimes, delaying is enough. Enough for tomorrow to come. The storm above began to fade, the clouds slowly parting to reveal faint traces of moonlight. The battlefield grew still once more, silence settling over the ruins. Two titans had clashed, their wills shaping the night, and though neither had achieved a decisive victory, the world itself had been changed by their struggle. Madara disappeared into the shadows, his form vanishing like a phantom, his ambitions still burning, his path not yet finished. And Minato, exhausted and broken, lay among the shattered earth, his mind at ease, despite his body's weakness. He had not won, but he had stood firm, had shown that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, light could still shine. And so the night ended, not with a clear victor, but with the quiet truth that battles are not always decided by strength alone. Sometimes they are decided by conviction, by the willingness to hold on to hope, even when hope seems impossible. Minato Namikaze, the yellow flash, had given everything. And though Madara remained, his path forward had been slowed, his certainty shaken. As dawn broke on the horizon, the first rays of sunlight touched the ruined earth, washing the battlefield in soft gold. And for that brief moment, the light of a new day carried with it the promise that no matter how fierce the storm, the morning would always return.